Hi, my name is Stacy Hall, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my senior research project. For my senior research project, I decided to do my project on love styles that were introduced by a sociologist and psychologist, John Lee, back in the 1970s. He wrote a book called The Colors of Love, and I came up with this topic to do because of a class that I'm currently taking called Marriage and Family. In Marriage and Family, we talk about the 6 love styles and go into great detail. After taking the class and understanding in greater detail of the love styles, I thought I would be interested to see how people of my age group view these love styles and if they like them or not. Hi, my name is Stacy Hall, and I'm going to talk a little bit to you about my senior research project. My senior research project is on love styles that were introduced by a sociologist and a psychologist named John Lee back in the 1970s. He came up with this book called The Colors of Love, and it describes in great detail about the 6 love styles that he suggested. The 6 love styles are Eros, Storge, and Ludus, which are the primary, and then he had 3 secondary, which were Pragma, Manic, and Agape. These 3 secondary were made up of the primary. For my research project, I just decided to use Eros, Ludic, and Pragma. The reason I picked these 3 were Eros is the most common for college-age students. It's basically your love at first sight type of person. The people that typically say happily ever after or comments like that about their relationship. The Ludic lover is your typical bad boy, quarterback kind of guy who is in one relationship but still kind of playing with other people on the sidelines. He views love as a game. And then your Pragma lover is your logical lover. This is kind of my middle ground, the one that I hope people view as the most stable relationship, but you just never know. Although a lot of research has been done on the love styles, there's not a prototype kind of study that goes along with what my study is all about. The one that came kind of close to it, but the one that I found the most interesting that I have read so far, was one by Hans. He did Do Love Styles Predict Lifetime of Sex Partners? He kind of looked at the love styles and then looked at the number of sex partners that the love styles have and kind of showed correlation between the two. The study was very interesting because it went into greater detail about each of the love styles and the way that they think and the way that they understand. And I think that that is important for me as the researcher to understand when going about this study that I am creating. As expected in this research, Hans found that males have more sex partners than females, but he also concluded that men typically move more towards the game playing kind of love, which would be more of your ludic kind of love. And those ludics tend to have the most sex partners of any of the 6 love styles. With that said, females have lower sex partners, but they view their partners as best friends. They don't view sex as that important as a typical male does, which we all have seen research on how much men think about sex more than women. So this study did a really good job of explaining all of the details and explaining how they went about the study and how they got the consent, how they did their study, how they debriefed and all that stuff. And I think that this study is a good way for me to kind of copy how I want to run my study. It was the most interesting that I have read so far, and I really enjoyed seeing the correlation between the two because I myself didn't think about it. As far as the love styles and their sexual partners, and reading the study, I have gotten a lot more understanding of the love styles as a whole rather than just the definitions and the way that they act. Now we're going to talk a little bit about my study that I have created. I decided, like I had mentioned before, to use the 3 love styles of Eros, Ludic, and Pragma. The reason I picked these 3 was because they're at 2 different ends of the spectrum and then a middle ground. Eros is at one, Ludic is out at the other, then the Pragma kind of sits in the middle. The reason I did this is because I wanted to capture the whole love style rather than just do 3 crazy ones or 3 normal ones or something like that. So what I did was I used two Confederates, one boy and one girl, and I put them in an interview-like setting. I asked them questions, and they answered it based on whichever love style they were trying to portray. I started this by asking them if they would introduce themselves and if they were currently in the relationship, and they would say yes, and they had been in a relationship for 5 months. I kept this the same throughout both female and male, and then I made sure that they had agreed to be interviewed. Once they agreed to consent, I then asked them these series of questions, such as, what is your definition of love? What kind of qualities do you view in your potential romantic partner? How do you know if you found your one? What do you expect in your relationship? If problems should occur in your relationship, how would you handle it? How would your relationship end? And finally, what do you think are the chances your relationship would end? These questions were geared towards the 3 love styles. At the end of that, I sat down and made a questionnaire. I wanted to know how the participants would view these kind of relationships, these kind of people, these love styles. And so the questions were more based on how they portrayed the love styles. In my questionnaire, I asked them questions such as, how likely is this person to be successful in a long-term relationship? How authentic does this person sound? How happy is this person in their current relationship? How realistic is this approach to love? How likely is this person to be faithful? How interested would you be as a participant in being in a romantic relationship with this person? How likely is this person to experience jealousy? How appealing is this love style to you? And then finally, I asked them how likable this person was and how long do they think they will last in this relationship. These questions were based on just general relationship kind of questions. I wanted to know how these people view these love styles. At the end, I want to know how long they think it's going to last. Ludic, I don't imagine they're going to say this is going to last very long. An Eros lover, on the other hand, they could say, this girl is madly in love with this boy. They're going to last forever. But we all know that that's not typically what happens with an Eros lover. And then a Pragma, I would imagine that they would say, this person has their head on their shoulders and this relationship's going to last. I believe that the male Ludic is going to be, the one that people say is most likable as a male because that's what we are used to as a college-based student. People kind of look at a stereotype boy as a Ludic lover. Whereas for the female, I think that people will look more at the Eros for the girl because an Eros is the most common love style for college-age students. And then the Pragma is going to be somewhere in between. I think some people are going to really take to the Pragma, and then some people are going to be like, that's not really realistic. That's not the way we think. We're still young. We don't need to have our heads on our shoulders like that yet. That kind of question. I'm really interested in knowing how this all plays out and how we match up to what I myself think and how other people will think. At the end, I'm going to need about 75 participants. I would like to have, at least 15 per go at it and then kind of go from there. But I'm really excited to start and collecting data once I get approved by the IRB. And yeah, thank you for watching.